the Deuteronomistic history is sort of an odd conclusion to the Genesis through Numbers material, because it doesn't really have the expected narrative climax. You sort of expect the story to end with the entry of the Israelites into the land, and hopefully under Moses, and that doesn't occur. Some scholars have suggested that deferring Israel's possession of the land to the future may have reflected the historical experience of exile, an experience which challenged the very idea of the possession of the land as central to the maintenance of the covenant. So if you are in exile, then perhaps a more satisfying ending is to have Israel not in fact entering the land. The complex process by which Deuteronomy was formed underscores the fact that modern notions of authorship cannot be applied to biblical texts. We think of an author, we tend to think of an author as a discrete individual who composes a text at a specific time. But this isn't the way that texts came into being in the ancient world, particularly important communal texts. As Weinfeld points out, the biblical authors were what we would call collectors, compilers, revisers, editors, and interpreters of ancient tradition. Ancient texts were generally the product of many hands over the stretch of many long centuries. And during that time, modifications and recontextualizations occurred. And so we refer to those who transmit and develop a text in this way as a school. But you need to understand that we are using that in a relatively informal way. So when we talk about the Deuteronomic School or the Deuteronomistic School, we're really talking about the fact that we have a set of texts that all seem to share a certain sort of ideology or orientation, and yet we know that parts of them seem to date from very, very different times. And so we think of that text as being preserved, transmitted, and developed by many hands who share certain commonalities, common ideology, so we call it a school. It's not that we know of the existence of a Deuteronomistic school and we say, oh, well, then they must have produced this text. It's the other way around. We have a text, and its features suggest to us a long-standing tradition of scholarship, right, that preserved and transmitted the text in that way. Same with the priestly school. We're speaking about the priestly materials, which clearly have evidence of originating from the 8th, 7th, 6th, and 5th centuries, and so there must have been a common stretch of scholarship that would have preserved and transmitted and developed those traditions, and we call that the priestly school.